In the Line of Fire by Pervez Musharraf. All the 8,000 copies of the English version were sold out in India during the initial stage of the launch. The Indian distributor has ordered another 4,000 copies to meet the demand, according to the news report. Copies sold in India outnumbered the copies sold in Pakistan. A New Delhi publisher published the Hindi version of his book titled as Agnipath, The Path of Fire. This book gives a perspective on the basis of how the Pakistani government truly functions, the removal of Nawaz Sharif from power, the Kargil conflict, relations with India, anti-terror operation within Pakistan, and the murder of Daniel Pearl. As President of Pakistan, Musharraf occupied what Time magazine described as the most dangerous job in the world, playing a critical role in the war on terror and directing countless raids on Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Musharraf begins when he was about 5 years old and Pakistan was breaking away from India. Musharraf tells of his life story from the time he left India to live in what is now Pakistan, to the time he spent in Turkey, to his return to Pakistan and his rise to power. Along the way are several frightening attempts on his life. Under his tenure, the country saw prosperity it had not seen for a long time due to corrupt politicians in power before him. Musharraf wrote, "Those who are familiar with Mark Twain's works will understand when I say that I was something of a Tom Sawyer, with a difference that I went to school happily. I was only 18 when I entered the Pakistan Military Academy in 1961. It was in the PMA that I actually started studying seriously. Fortunately, I learned that if I applied myself, I could excel. It taught me that enduring extreme hardship has more to do with mental resilience than physical stamina. My annual confidential reports were always very good, only my lack of discipline held me back. My theory was to keep busy and active to overcome the feelings of isolation and loneliness." Zulfikar Ali Bhutto took control of virtually all the nation's industries: steel, chemicals, cement, shipping, banking, insurance, engineering, gas and power distribution, and even small industries like flour milling, cotton ginning and rice husking, as well as the private school and colleges, the start of the destruction of our educational system. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was really a fascist, using the most progressive rhetoric to promote regressive ends, the first of which was to stay in power forever. It was a tragedy because a man of his undoubted capability could have done a lot of good for his country. But the time his regime ended, I had come to the conclusion that Bhutto was the worst thing that had yet happened to Pakistan. I still maintain that Zulfikar Ali Bhutto did more damage to the country than anyone else, damage from which we have still not fully recovered. Among other things, he was the first to try to appease the religious right. He banned liquor and gambling and declared Friday a holiday instead of Sunday. This was a hypocrisy at its peak because everyone knew that he did not believe in any one of these actions. Bhutto set up a Gestapo-like force called the Federal Security Force (FSF) that was much hated and feared. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto is said to have adopted a mocking, belittling attitude even toward his own appointee as Army Chief General Ziaul Haq. Such an attitude led to a unity among all the opposing forces. First, when the army gets involved with martial law, it gets distracted from its vital military duties. Military training and readiness suffer. Second, when we superimpose martial law and place the military over the civilian government, the latter ceases functioning. When martial law is later lifted, the civilian functionaries remain ineffective. Their growth is stunted. Last, I learned that whatever the law, civil or military, the poor are always victim of oppression. President Zia in the 1980s completed what Bhutto had started in the dying phase of his regime, the total appeasement of the religious lobby. Zia did not have a political base or lobby. By hanging Bhutto, he turned Bhutto into a martyr and his political party, the PPP, into a greater force. The four changes of Prime Minister involved two cycles of alteration between Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif. Never in the history of Pakistan had we seen such a combination of the worst kind of government, or rather a nearly lack of governance, along with corruption and the plunder of national wealth. I was army chief for only a year before the army had to react against Nawaz Sharif. My working relationship with him was perfectly good in the beginning, with some minor disagreements over the sacking of two major generals, the appointments of two lieutenant generals, and his request to me to court-martial a journalist for treason. I must say that I was quite amused by his style of working. I never saw him reading or writing anything. Nawaz Sharif became nervous, indeed hysterical, when he realized that the army might in fact have time to strike back while my plane was still in the air. At 6:10, the Karachi Corps Commander Lieutenant General Usmani ordered Major General Malik Iftikhar Ali Khan, the person who spoke with me in plane from the air traffic control tower, to send the immediate reaction group to Karachi airport to ensure that my flight would be able to land there. Two of the Prime Minister guards, who were commandos, knew me as one of their own. Suddenly they surrendered their weapons and changed side. It was a turning point. Seeing them, the other guards of the Prime Minister and Ziauddin started laying down their arms too. Regarding rebuilding the nation, I selected Shaukat Aziz, a capable international banker with a strong reputation. One factor that swayed my decision in his favor was that Shaukat Aziz is a self-made man from humble middle class beginnings like me. I strongly believe that no country can progress without democracy, but democracy has to be tailored in accordance with each nation's peculiar environment. Nawaz Sharif showed the typical lack of character that he has come to be known for, launching a tirade of lies and distortions against me. Exile and isolation are an opportunity for introspection and critical self-analysis. Nawaz Sharif apparently learned nothing from his exile and failed to grow intellectually or politically. There was a dire need for unity of command in governance. By that, I imply a single authority over the three important organs of government: the bureaucracy, the political system, and the military. With the help of my advisors, I realized early on what we had to avoid quick fixes and make some very tough decisions. Foreign exchange reserves have risen from a 300 million to 12.5 billion. Exports are hitting 17 billion for 2006, whereas they were only 7.8 billion in 1999. Regarding war on terror, Musharraf wrote, "This was a ruthless analysis which I made for the sake of my country. Richard Armitage, undiplomatic language had nothing to do with my decision. Mullah Umar actually did a great disservice to the religion that he holds so dear. I was impressed by the way Shaukat Aziz conducted himself during and after the attempt on his life. A general of the Pakistan Army is trained to face bullets and bombs, but Shaukat Aziz was a banker in the New York before he came to Pakistan. Yet he handled himself with great self-control, and my already high regard for him went up even more. I firmly believe that success in one's life and career depends more on the wholesome development of personality than on mere intellectual brilliance. Everyone needs a healthy balance between intellectual development, moral development, physical development, and social development. Leadership is inborn to a degree, but it can be acquired through effort. It is an art, not at all a science, or as my friend Colin Powell puts it beautifully, it is the art of accomplishing more than the science of management says it is possible. A leader must never, as Richard Nixon says in his book Leaders, suffer paralysis through analysis. I agree. Napoleon said that 2/3 of decision making is based on study, analysis, calculation, facts, and figure, but the other third is always a leap in the dark based on one's gut. Anyone who increases that 1/3 is too impulsive. Anyone who increases the 2/3 lacks decisiveness and is no leader. I agree with this too. Of course, it goes without saying that the leader must make the right decisions most of the time. No policy is ever 100% successful or perfect. I have come to the conclusion that while pushing for optimum results, you should accept partial success as long as you are moving in the right direction. A glass at least half full is a good thing. You can always add to it.